Welcome back to another exciting episode of Meanwhile Back on the Podcast. I'm Frank McGuire.
I'm Christina Didumas.
I'm Saba Mir.
I'm Chris Abano.
Welcome, guys. Welcome. Have we got a great show lined up for you? This is the first episode in a series we are calling Comic Book Movies That Could Have Been. In this series, we're going to break down the best comic book films that never made it to production. And in this first episode, we take you back to 1997, where famed comic book writer Marc Dematteis, the same guy who gave us Kraven's Last Hunt, has been recruited by big-time producer Chris Columbus to draft a film treatment starring the one, the only Daredevil. And we are breaking it all down, so stay right there.
Meanwhile, back on the podcast, four colossal nerds named Saba, Chris, Christina, and Frank have set out to take on a great darkness that has enveloped the world of fandom with their powers of common sense and the strength to take on even the most butthurt Twitter mobs and insufferable comment section trolls. They fight for truth, objectivity, and nuance in the conversation and debate over fictional made-up shit.
Welcome back to another episode of Meanwhile Back on the Podcast. Like I said in the intro, we are talking about the man without fear, Daredevil. One would say maybe the horniest guy in the Marvel Universe.
Sure, if you like dad jokes.
If you do like dad, I think everybody likes dad jokes these days. Isn't that like the thing?
I don't know if that's the case with everyone.
I'm not a fan of dad jokes.
I feel like
I'm not
dad
a fan
jokes
of
are
dad
popular.
jokes at all.
I'm not into it. It's not my thing, but I feel like it is popular. Everybody's kind of making them all the time. So
I see it on every dating profile that I ever swipe across on Tinder or Bumble. It's like, I like dad jokes. Oh, well, aren't you original?
it's
What else do
very
you like?
popular on dating profiles.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
what else
it?
do you
I
like?
have no
Music?
idea. I didn't know
What?
that was like a thing that people advertised on a dating profile. I guess you could put whatever, but
Saba, are you trying to say inadvertently that you've never been on a dating profile or a dating app site?
no, I never have.
Wow.
I don't know. Is
Wow.
that weird?
That's surprising.
Yeah. I wonder what Daredevil would be like on a dating app, although I figure it'd be quite different for him.
I think he would just
he'd
have...
be less horny on a dating app.
He'd probably be really dark. No, he maybe wouldn't be dark.
I think he'd have a dark slant to his profile for sure. He would definitely probably, it'd be a little bit self-effacing, probably making a couple of jokes about the fact that he's blind. Like, when I see you, I'm going to have to touch you all over to know what you look like, something
Please,
like
I
that.
really hope he doesn't say things like that.
I don't picture Daredevil saying things like that. That's more of like a Deadpool thing to
That would
say.
be if Foggy set up an account without telling him and made a bunch of jokes on his behalf.
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, Matt Murdock has always been kind of a ladies' man, so
Yeah, he
he's never
doesn't.
really...
He doesn't need those apps. He's just out there.
Yeah, he's been with the Black Widow, Elektra.
It's really easy to be a ladies' man when you know what a girl likes because you can sense it from their heartbeats and their like
True
physical
say.
reactions.
True say,
Kind of
man.
cheating, bro. Come on now.
Yeah, like you can tell when like their pulse is quickening, when they're getting flush, like you know
Damn.
exactly when to strike, dude. There's no there's no
imagine
ifs, ands,
he-
or buts.
That's a secret super.
Frank seems really
power for him.
envious of these powers.
Yeah. Imagine like he was like just a straight up perv. Like, and this would be a whole different comic.
Yeah.
At least he's not.
Yeah. Well, in this version, so Frank was talking about, we're sort of starting this whole series of movies that could have been. And,
Yep.
we all know the Daredevil movie that came out with the early 2000s. It was Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. I was like,
and
which one is
Clark
it?
Duncan, rest in peace.
Yeah. So, that one came out. And I
Colin
think,
Farrell.
what were your guys' initial thoughts on that movie?
Okay. Can I go first? We'll go around the table, but I got to say this, okay? I got a lot of gripes with this film, and it starts with the introduction scene, the meet cute between Matt Murdock and Elektra Nachios. And I'm sorry, but they meet in a playground and they like have this like mock sparring match, and there's people surrounding this playground, yet Matt Murdock appears to be blind. He has a cane in his hand, yet he's literally fighting one of the most lethal people on the planet with like expertise. like, doesn't he pretty much give himself away at that moment that he's fucking Daredevil? Like,
Yeah.
like, isn't that like the indication that, okay, this guy's blind, yet he's able to like block kicks and punches, and he's able to be this acrobatic? But no, this guy's not Daredevil. He's a normal blind guy fighting a girl in a park. It makes no sense, dude. It makes no sense.
It does make Elektra look bad in the sense that she's fighting someone who, like, you know, cannot see, essentially.
Yeah, like, you don't see him get his butt kicked because, I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody who's differently abled, but like a blind guy, if you were in a fist fight with him, it's not going to be like Kung Fu The Legend Continues. You're not going to be able to like feel people's presence around you and know where they're going to strike you. It's just not realistic, right? So to see somebody in that, like, granted, you have to suspend disbelief because it's a movie, but when you do it in front of a group of people, like, how do you not put two and two together that it's Daredevil? Like, how do you not do that?
And also his cane is the same freaking color as
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Daredevil. As Daredevil's like Billy. I'm pretty sure it is his Billy stick. He just like walks around with it as a walking stick during the day. It's like Batman walking around with the utility belt, and I mean Bruce Wayne walking around with the utility belt.
Yeah,
going,
he just
I'm
likes
not
the
Batman.
aesthetic. He likes the aesthetic, you know, it's the style.
Yeah.
And I think, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Billy Club and the cane the same thing at one point in the film? Like, it retracted into itself, and oh my god, like, that's just a dumb decision. I'm sorry.
So
but
you were not
Yeah.
a fan of that movie then?
No, like,
I'm sensing.
you know, it had its moments. But Ben Affleck looked like a guy that escaped from a BDSM club in the Daredevil outfit, and it really didn't track with me.
I actually like that outfit.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a hard time comparing that outfit to the Netflix show outfit. I don't know what I like better. I like his helmet in the movie, for sure better, but the rest of the outfit, I'm not. I don't know. I kind of like it. It's kind of just like it could pass off as just like a biker jacket, and if you're like this weird biker dude. But anyways, I didn't hate the movie. Like, you gotta remember, like, you're right, that scene in particular I have a lot of problems with. But you gotta remember, this is like pre height of superhero movies movie, and it's like the corniness is gonna be there, and like, to be honest, like this movie that we're gonna talk about, which is not this movie, which is actually before the Ben Affleck movie, this movie itself even had a lot of corniness to it. But I did like a lot of the things in the Ben Affleck movies. I like the portrayal of Elektra, and I like the Kingpin, their version of Kingpin, and even Colin Farrell as an Irish Bullseye was pretty dope. And I like the darkness of it. Like, I don't know, I didn't hate the movie.
Yeah, I didn't hate it, but you know, Saba, you haven't really said much about the movie. Did you? Like, you've obviously seen it. What did you think?
Yeah, I guess it's the same thing. So Daredevil wasn't also, for me growing up at that time, because I was young, wasn't like a big superhero for me. So it wasn't like a movie that I really considered anything like iconic. It was a good movie. I did have issues with Ben Affleck. I don't know. I'm just like kind of hit or miss with him in roles sometimes.
Me too.
Like, yeah, I don't know. Just something about him seemed a little off. I mean, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I do agree with the whole scene at the beginning or like the meet cute. Yeah, the one thing that I will say is that, you know, we're going to be talking about the script that did not come out, or the treatment. And I do prefer the way that the relationship between Elektra and Daredevil happens in this movie as opposed to the treatment, I think, just because of, in terms of like, or at least for me, like realism in a sense. But yeah, we'll get into it for sure. What about you, Christina?
No, for sure. Yeah, Christina, what are your
the
thoughts?
Jennifer Garner one was, I think,
I
more
just
realistic.
remember like a bunch of things being cringy, like some of the dialogue, and I think there's like a 4-minute montage of Elektra playing with her size to the song Evanescence.
Oh,
yes, there is.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. That's coming back to me.
So
yeah, and she's stabbing bags of sand.
But she doesn't feel like a fighter. Like, nothing about that makes her feel like a fighter to me, which is super weird too. Like, at least if
Come
you're
here,
gonna
you
do that,
bag of sand! I'm gonna get you.
Doing something wicked or like doing backflips or something.
Well, nothing says like, you know, angst like Evanescence, really.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know what I'm realizing about that movie is they just did what they could to get these individual cool looking scenes, and all the setup for the scenes don't really make a lot of sense. But the individual shots of the scenes, they're just trying to make like a visual thing for the audience. So, for example, one of the big things is like that subway scene where after he takes out one of the I think it may be mob or something, and then the reporter throws a match, and then it lights the double
The
D,
double
his
D.
symbol. Like,
Yeah.
like that scene made no sense, but the cool shot of the guy with his glasses and the reflection of his insignia in fire looked really cool.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like an analogy for the rest of the scene. The rest of the movies, they just try to do these cool scenes, and all the setups for the scenes are kind of horrible. But it's like that's kind of what people envision as superhero movies, anyways. It's like, yeah, we're trying to depict a visual medium as in the comic books. So let's just set up all these cool shots that
Yeah.
they're just gonna like you know. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's my biggest problem with it.
That's a good way of explaining it too. Yeah, I feel like I didn't hate everything, but overall there was like a bit too much cringiness. I watched it with my family in a living room, but it's definitely not something I watched again, and it's not something I would have wanted to pay money to go see.
Yeah.
Although there
you know,
were some really ballsy things that movie did, like killing Elektra. I thought that was the coolest thing, because like as comic book fans, you know Elektra dies in the comic books and gets
Mhm.
brought back to life by Stick, and it's like them killing her off in the movie and not telling you that she comes back to life. I thought that was ballsy as fuck.
Yeah. And then they had the sequel as well, the Electro movie.
Yeah, the Elektra movie, a spin-off sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie was weird as shit. There was like literally like, I don't know, weird animalistic type people.
Tattoo was
Don't-
awesome.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I found that movie fucking weird.
Yeah, let's not
But,
talk about that movie. I don't
Yeah, let's not do that. Yeah.
That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, we can go down this, we can go down the Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner rabbit hole for this entire episode if we
Yeah.
really, really wanted to. But I really want to talk about this Man Without Fear treatment that Jean-Marc Dematteis did in 1997. Because honestly, as we sit here and we reminisce about the Daredevil movie that not really a lot of people liked, I think that this is a Daredevil movie that everybody would have loved. Honestly, that's my take on it. I don't know how you guys feel. Let's go around the table. Let's talk about kind of what our initial impressions were from this treatment. Chris, you go first.
Yeah, this treatment I liked. Well, like to give context to the listeners, this treatment came before the Ben Affleck movie. On a lot of the things in that movie was inspired by this treatment, and I thought like it also omitted a lot, and the stuff that it like got rid of were so good in the treatment, like especially when he was younger, like everything in the first act of the treatment I love, and it's something we don't really see in, actually I don't think we have seen it even now in superhero movies. But then again, there are some like really cringy things. Like, if we're talking about cringe, like this
Yeah.
treatment had more cringy things than the movie had.
Really, for you? Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
not quantity, but like
Yeah.
there's some singular things in this treatment that I'm like, oh, that never should make the silver screen ever, because it's just like very, unless you're going for that, unless you're going for super corn. But there's a lot, like where this movie dips into the darkness, I love. Where it dips into like trying to be the stylistic like comic book reproduction of a comic stand, like I didn't like any of that stuff. But like when we're talking about like the psychology into Matt Murdock and the darkness of his character and the exploration of the side characters, namely Bullseye and Kingpin, I loved all of that. I think that's something the movie that we got should have explored. I actually should have kept it on, because again, like we like the word is that like this was kind of inspired that movie, that Ben Affleck movie, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like give and take for me.
Cool. Saba, what about you?
I like agree with Chris on the cringe factor, but part of me thinks like it's also the 90s. And, sometimes when you watch movies from the 90s, you're like, damn, that was like pretty cringy. Like I can go back and see movies that I love and they have that. So some of that I can forgive there. Will say that I also like the dark parts of it, almost so much that like the darkness is like kind of like an alter ego for him. Like it's
nice.
like,
I like that.
it's like two parts of him. And I do like how they show that in the script more. Because I think, like, these days, we've had movies, like, you can look at, like, a Joker or even, like, the Christian Bale Dark Knight, where they're really looking into the psyche of a superhero, right? And I think
Mhm.
this movie kind of did that at a time where they didn't really do that with superhero movies. Like superhero movies were just more like, it's a superhero, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
they're there to save the day. And you can kind of, and this kind of had a little bit of that exploration. There are definitely things, like I mentioned, that I thought were not like really my taste. And we'll get into it, but kind of like the Elektra Daredevil sort of arc. I mean, I do like their introduction here a bit better, but there's like some parts of it I'm like, that is just does not seem realistic to me. And Bullseye I'm hit or miss with. I do like him, but I feel like sometimes he pops into the script into a weird way. I don't know. Like there's a scene where he like pops back in, and I don't know. It seems like I don't know. I mean, it's just a treatment. So for those of you guys who don't know what a treatment is, it's not the whole script. It's basically like act 1, act 2, act 3. There's only like some dialogue. If it's like important
Mhm.
dialogue, it's mostly just describing the story. So it's really like the kind of the bones of it. And really from the bones of it, it does seem like it would be an awesome movie to see.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot more character depth and character growth in this treatment. So that I like. Some of the dialogue comes across as a bit cringy for me. So
Mhm.
I don't know. Yeah, there's moments where I'm like, oh, I can't believe you just said that. But for the most part, I think it would be a fun movie to watch.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I think I agree with a lot of what Chris said in terms of the act one, the way that they established the character, the duality in his psychology, the duality in his belief system, and and also the way that his moral compass kind of functions in the two worlds that he kind of lives in. I think that was very exciting and interesting. I have my disagreements with some of the things that were done with Jack Murdoch, Matt's father, as far as that character goes. I really love the dynamic between Kingpin and Elektra. That was really cool. I thought Bullseye played a very interesting role in the story. I felt like this story was very busy, especially for
Yeah.
something in
Yeah. I agree.
1997.
Mhm.
You know, these typical movies are, one villain, not a lot of overlap, and nameless henchmen that basically just end up in body bags because of our hero, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So you don't really get to see a lot of layered conflict. And it was kind of cool to kind of see that play out in that time, long before we actually got to see that stuff, say in the modern Marvel universe or modern DC universe. So that was very cool to see. And I liked this Elektra Matt dynamic a lot better than I did the Jennifer Garner Ben Affleck dynamic. I think that their first meeting is really one for the storybooks. It almost kind of harkens back to something along the lines of, a sailor seeing a mermaid in
Oh
like the
my lord.
1600s. You know what I'm saying?
The siren
Um,
call. You know what?
Sorry,
Like a siren
well,
call.
no, not the siren call, but the way that they kind of keep their distance, but kind of play with each other a little bit. You know what I mean?
So
Up
they
until
meet.
a
Yeah,
certain point.
they meet at like a charity ball, like an event like that.
No, that's not their first meeting though. But like, we'll get into that when we get into the
Yeah.
story because I
Yeah.
because I don't
Okay,
want to give away.
Let's
I
get
don't want to
into
give
it.
away that part. But
Let's get
yeah,
into it. And the reason why I like this act in this version rather than the film that we got is first of all it's longer. Like it seems like a full act and not just this like elaborate title screen like most other like superhero origin stories. They just kind of get it out of the way to get you into oh yes he's a superhero now doing his thing. This has actually felt more like a full act where it's about him as a young boy, and the difference is he wasn't a good kid. He was part of this like street gang, and yeah, you actually like the first time you see him, he steals like what does he do? Steal something from a cop or like punch a cop or something like that?
he stole his billy club and like
Billy
taunted
Club,
him and
right,
shit.
right.
Yeah,
And then like he runs around and then he starts parkouring around the city, which I absolutely love. I love
Yeah.
that his skills as like this Daredevil essentially, like it's his skills, it's his hard earned skills as this like I don't want to say street urchin, but like this like criminal like kid, and he starts like running around the city, and he shows the audience right away that he has no fear, and he's kind of like this macho kid who leads a bunch of other kids, and then we get into like the meat of his story, which is he's in this very dark and like in a lot of ways abusive. I mean, it is abusive. He's got this abusive relationship with his father, and who's this like washed up prized boxer, and now he's like relegated himself into doing like pro wrestling crap, and he's got like this part I didn't necessarily like. So his father's like alter ego in professional wrestling is the devil or something.
Mephisto.
Mephisto, right.
Yeah.
And that later becomes like his inspiration to don this outfit. But anyways, like his father and him have this like really rough life. Like they don't have they lost their mother, and they're barely keeping it together. And he's like kind of lashing out and becoming this like street criminal because of this. And his father got driven into drinking because of like their life is falling apart essentially. And they actually get into an argument, and then his father strikes him. Which like I love that they put this at this movie. It's just like right away it hits you with like this origin story that we don't ever see. And right away you also get to see like a dark part of this young boy's backstory that most other superheroes kind of get when they get the spark to become a superhero. Like the most notable comparison that I have is like Batman. Like Bruce Wayne was a good kid his entire life until his parents die in front of him, and then it sparks this darkness. But with Matt Murdock, it's like this is what I loved about his character is that like the darkness is it was ingrained. He was like he wasn't fighting this new element of darkness. He was been fighting that all along. And so anyways, like this act goes on for a long time, and then they make each other a promise after they've kind of gone to the boiling point of their relationship, and they make each other a promise where he is gonna clean up his act and like go back into boxing while he gives himself an education. And they do that actually, and you actually go through the years where they grow up. And if you guys remember in the movie, they fast track him to an adult like really really fast. Here they actually like grow together. Like he becomes a teenager, he goes like there's this like montage scene where they're like growing up, and there I think I missed something obviously with the whole arrangement that his father had with the
with Tommy
somebody fill me in on that
Yeah,
one, 'cause I've been
sure.
talking
So,
for too long, so you go ahead.
Yeah, so basically what kind of happened was, Jack's trying to get his life together, Matt's trying to get his life together. They've made promises to each other. And then out of nowhere, Jack gets an opportunity to start heavyweight boxing again through some of Kingpin's cronies. And then around this time, Matt runs into his old gang, and one of the guys that he beat up earlier in the treatment is apparently running this gang now. So it's kind of he's trying to come back at Matt the same way that he came at him. And Matt's a new guy now, and he doesn't want to fight this kid. He doesn't even want to get into it. But as the fight's about to start, Matt can see across the street that there's this blind guy about to cross right in front of like a giant truck. Typical Daredevil origin story. And Matt jumps in to save the day and pushes this guy out of the way, and the truck tips over, and he gets covered in the toxic waste and all that kind of shit. And he gets he goes to the hospital. And
wait, hold on. Let me interrupt you right there. Do we think that's Stick, that blind guy?
No, I don't think so. No.
I think that'd be kind of cool if that was Stick. And I don't know if he necessarily had the whole radioactive thing planned, but like it would be pretty cool if that was Stick trying to get him to kind of not fight his younger buddies, or like his gang, his old gang. Like he's watching him this whole time. But anyways,
Stick. I don't know, dude, but that would be super cool if somebody actually thought to do that. Like if Stick was that calculating and that like,
and he is
Machiavellian, right?
Yeah.
He is in the in a sense. The Chased have always been this group that have had the kind of foresight and the and the prophetic vision of
kind of cool.
The hand and everything too, right? So that would be kind of interesting. But I don't think anybody's ever written that. Like I don't think anybody's ever written that the guy that Matt saved was Stick, right?
Or anyone.
But Stick does come back into his life shortly after and kind of, starts to obviously mold him into this warrior, right? So, but yeah, so from this point, Matt goes into the hospital. Obviously, he's trying to recover for his injuries. Battling Jack Murdock is trying to cover the hospital bills, and there's all this, these costs kind of surmounting, and the Kingpin's cronies show up again. And they're like, hey, listen, we're totally willing to cover all of Matt's hospital bills.
So yeah, with all those hospital bills, and he doesn't really know how to pay them. Tommy DelFalco, who is, one of these cronies that comes around and says, okay, like we'll totally take care of this. It's totally fine. You just have to repay us. You can repay us down the road. So obviously Jack agrees to this because, his son is there in a hospital bed. What is he going to do? Obviously, though, we can tell as the audience that whatever he has to do to repay him is probably not going to be great. But they both kind of sort of, have a life from this. And then we see more of a montage of him growing up and we see Jack, sort of rising back to this kind of fame that he had. He's doing well. And even, Matt himself is like really applying himself in school. Like he's studying hard. They're both really keeping true to the promises that they've made. Which I like as well because, one could characterize Jack as like not a good father from the beginning when you see him like strike his child and everything else. But like you also see like he is struggling so much. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're both struggling together and they both know they only have each other and they're kind of like relying on each other to sort of keep the other one accountable. I don't know. That's like how I kind of saw it, which I do.
I didn't really see him as a bad father. I just saw him as a father in a bad circumstance.
Yeah.
Right? Like alcoholism is a coping mechanism for him. Obviously it's not a good thing, but like I like that whole like this is a real father and we can like some of us can relate to maybe that situation, right? So it's very like organic, his character.
But
I feel like I kind of like the development of their relationship, and like although they seem to struggle at times, it seems like they're pretty close in the grand scheme of things. So
yeah, I think they just like understand each other like on a level, you know what I mean? Like even from the like I feel like the darkness that Matt has in himself, I also feel like it kind of shows that Jack has that too, like in that sense.
Yeah, it's a very, speaking as a former Irish Catholic, it's a very Irish Catholic thing, and I feel like the Matt Murdock in this story is very much based on, the Southie Boston kind of Irish Catholic type. They're in trouble at a very young age. They really don't know what path they're going to take in their life, whether they're going to be, whether they're going to be a member of society or whether they're going to be something completely different. And I really like that. Like, I really like that angle. And again, a very Irish Catholic thing, which is boxing. Boxing was a huge thing for the Irish Catholics when they first started coming to North America. So, there's a lot of kind of Irish Catholic themes in this story. And obviously the idea of Catholic guilt is one of those things. And I think it both weighs on both of them. They constantly have to deal with the conflict within themselves. They know that they're not living their best lives. So I can see why that would cause some distress in both of them. So obviously Matt comes out of the hospital blind. I don't think that's any surprise. That's kind of the origin story of Matt Murdock. This chemical spills on him. He loses his sight. He gets super heightened senses. He's basically become superhuman outside of sight. He has his own kind of sight now, like kind of the radar sonar thing. He hasn't discovered this yet, obviously, but he's starting to kind of realize that his senses are much stronger than what they used to be. And it's kind of an incremental
we get a
thing.
montage for the self-discovery of that.
There's a lot of montage in Act 1. I just realized I would probably hate it. Like I'm just counting it now, knowing how many are coming just in Act 1. There's like 4 at least. Like, geez, guys, that's not the only way to tell a backstory. Come on.
Montages are a weapon of screenwriters, especially with treatments. It just makes things easier to kind of pack in a bunch of intercut scenes without having to kind of write all the dialogue behind it too.
4 in 1 act,
right?
Like 4 in 1 act is like weird enough. 4 in the first act is like it's like so weird. It's just like scene montage. It's so funny.
I don't hate the montage that cuts between the wrestling ring and I guess friendship, or where he's kind of working out and like figuring himself out. I don't hate that montage, but I think there's too many.
Yeah. So as Baron Mordo would say in Doctor Strange, the check comes due, and Kingpin's cronies show up on Jack Murdock's step, and they're basically like, hey, you got this big heavyweight fight coming up. It's time for you to pay your bill. And he's asked to take a dive in this upcoming match. So the match goes down. Matt goes to the fight, and apparently when Jack is supposed to take the dive, it's Matt's presence that prevents him from taking the dive. He doesn't want to take the dive. He wants to show his son that, he has his pride back. He doesn't want to take a step backwards in the eyes of his son. He doesn't want to ruin what they've built up, right? So Jack doesn't take a dive, and I think there's no real explanation as to where Matt goes after the fight, but he's obviously gone somewhere else after at the end of the fight, and Jack's gone somewhere else. But Jack gets picked up by the Kingpin's cronies and taken to like a warehouse or somewhere discreet, and they basically beat the shit out of him. And then Matt can apparently pick up the sound of his father being beaten from like miles and miles away. And there's this crazy scene where he does this parkour run across New York City trying to get to his father to save his life. And by the time he gets there, Jack is dead. And Matt decides that he's going to do whatever he needs to do to get the justice for his father. So he adopts the Mephisto wrestling character that his father created to go out and terrorize the people that killed his father. So he hunts them down. And Chris, what's his line? The one that you hated more than anything else?
Oh,
Sorry,
I love
what'd
it.
you say?
Confess your sins. It's
Confess
very
your
air.
sins.
It's very air. It's
I
very
hated
like
that.
it's like
That
you
was-
failed
that
the
was so
city.
cringy. Yeah. Confess your
I
sins.
hate when religion gets like cringy. Like it's cool if it's part of your character
Yeah.
background or whatever.
That
Religious
looks
guilt, we
good.
get it, whatever. But
Yeah, that looks
Religion-
good in a comic book strip, but like in a movie, I'd be like, oh,
It's
my
hit or
eyes hurt
miss. It
from
depends on how the
rolling.
line is
Yeah.
delivered. It's all about the
Yeah.
delivery. Like, I don't really know. But one thing I do like though, and I kind of took this from the actual treatment, because as like Matt is trying to hunt down these people, like he's kind of giving in to the darkness. So like there's a
Yes.
line that in the treatment that says, for all the justifiable anger, for all the brokenhearted seeking of vengeance, there's a dark pleasure Matt takes in the hunt, which I just think is like
Yes.
a cool
Yeah.
line. Like that's not a line
Yes.
you would really like see. You would see him acted out, but
And I'd like to add a caveat to that. Jean-Marc Dematteis wrote Kraven's Last Hunt, one of the best Spider-Man
Oh.
stories of all time. So I'm not surprised that he understands the mindset of the hunter, like the psyche of the hunter and how it's kind of bled into Matt's character here. So I'm not shocked by this because that story is fucking fantastic. I don't know if you guys have read it. I read it when I was a kid. It's amazing. It's so cool. Like Kraven basically gets paid to hunt down Spider-Man after he turns into the black suit Spider-Man, the Venom suit Spider-Man. So it's fucking rad. It's really good. Anyways,
so yeah, Matt really, in somewhat enjoying that hunt in a sense. Obviously something really like terrible has happened to him. This also, when he does go on this hunt and meets his people and he finds them, which he eventually does, it kind of makes him realize there's like a bigger picture behind all of this. Someone says to him, one of the cronies says, not a Blues Bros in New York without the Kingpin say so, and this is the first that Matt has heard of him, but obviously this is going to be a domino effect because these guys were just cronies. They're just puppeteers. That's all they were,
Yep.
and they were not the ones pulling the strings. So it really it's like a lifelong passion for him, I guess.
Yeah, so Sab, I really like what you said about Matt kind of finding this inner darkness in him. And I think what happened to him psychologically was that he left that part of his life behind, right? Like he left, the thrill of, the adrenaline, the thrill of violence, all those things, he left behind when he wanted to turn his life around. But I think when he could turn that energy outwards in an effort to try and deal out some justice, right, in the name of his father, like to basically go out and punish the people who killed his father. I think that's what he was feeling was like, I used to do this for no reason at all. I used to do this for kicks, but now I'm doing this for something that I really, really believe in. which is justice, right? And
Yeah.
his own kind of brand of justice. And a
Yeah,
very,
vigilante.
and again, I'm sorry, but a very Catholic sense of justice as well. Like if you've ever read the Inquisition and the way that like, you know, Catholics treated people that they thought were criminals or thought weren't, you know, as good as them, then, you know, you'll totally get what I'm saying. But I think that is the case, that he tapped into something that made him feel more justified about being the way that he is. That's what I, you know, that's my take.
Mm-hmm.
No, for sure.
That makes yeah.
And I
Cool.
think I think the scene after this, you know, after he gets his revenge, do we have another montage or does it just jump
Yeah,
to
it
him being
is.
older?
Yeah, no, there's a quick montage where, you know, Matt goes away to college. He meets Foggy. Him and Foggy become friends. They start their partnership. And the first character we meet kind of out of the first major character we meet kind of out of school is this DA Tower. And this DA Tower is impressed
it's
with
important
him.
to note. Sorry,
Yeah.
Frank. It's important to note that this montage is cross cut with the montage another montage of Kingpin also rising up and doing his thing. So like you could tell that their stories are like kind
They're
of
linked
together. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely saw that too. The other thing is that, again, another montage. And again, I just think this is a, you know, it's a tool of writing treatments, I think, because I've seen it a lot in treatments.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that happened was there's these sightings around New York City of this masked figure basically breaking up drug deals and punishing criminals and, you know, doing what Daredevil does. So obviously Matt's kind of established himself as someone in the vigilante, you know, in the city of New York as a vigilante. He's, you know, he's established himself. And he's, you know, he's going out actively and dealing out justice, basically.
I think it's pretty interesting that, not interesting, but so you mentioned like, you know, the DA Towers and everything else. And he is, you know, by day, like this lawyer who works only in Hell's Kitchen. And then by night, you know, this vigilante. DA Towers even like says to him, like, you know, you can come help me take down Kingpin. Right. And he's like, no, I've got to stay here in Hell's Kitchen. Like, this is kind of like the place where, you know, where he's got to clean up first. Right. But obviously Kingpin is going to get into the story somehow, and their paths are going to cross one way or another. Because I think that's what he's basically doing in a sense, right? He's slowly like working his way up to him.
Yeah, he's working his way up to him. He's working the streets. Obviously, you know, the Kingpin is his Moby Dick. That's what he wants. But, you know, he's working through the street system, trying to get to him. And he gets his first kind of real connection to the Kingpin when there's a murder that's carried out against one of Kingpin's rivals, this Italian mob figure in a restaurant. He's killed by this guy that's dressed up as like this nerdy tourist who turns out to be Bullseye in disguise. Daredevil responds to this because he heard it happening from across the city again, and him and Bullseye have this incredible confrontation.
Yeah, and there was actually this one of the cringier parts that I when he was running towards this like restaurant, he like dives under a taxi, I think, and like rolls, and then as he rolls, like he starts changing into his outfit, and then like gets up from like underneath all the cars, and he's
I
like,
don't remember reading that. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah, he does like the weird Superman phone booth change, but underneath a car, and he's just like rolling, and then he goes. I'm like, oh god, this movie.
That's
But yeah,
ridiculous, dude.
Yeah. So, anyways, since you mentioned Bullseye, let's take a small time out and talk about him. Like I thought Bullseye, them getting into his character was something the movie could have used, and I did like it. However, I thought maybe they did it a little too much, as like this movie was a little too busy, and going into Bullseye, I felt like was a little like, I'm not saying they shouldn't have delved into his character. They should have, but just not to the extent that they did. What do you guys think with the Bullseye character?
You know, like I said, you know, I kind of felt that this movie definitely would have been busy for sure.
Yeah.
Did Bullseye really play a role that kind of change the story for Daredevil in any way? Not really.
No.
From what I could see from the
Yes,
treatment,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like he gave him,
They
you know,
threw
he
in-
gave him a connection. Like there was a direct connection established between, Bullseye was the conduit into Kingpin's world, I think, for Daredevil. But that was
Mhm.
really it.
I feel like they threw in something at the end, and we'll get to that I thought was.
Yeah.
I was trying to find if they built up to it. I don't. Should I say it or should I not say it? Should we
Not
wait?
yet, but
Okay,
not
I'll
yet.
build up
But I
to
think
it.
they did do this weird thing where it's like two different storylines, and like Kingpin and Daredevil were strangely two protagonists. Like obviously to Daredevil, Kingpin is his antagonist, but it also felt like Kingpin was his protagonist in his own part in this movie, which I thought was a little much, and Bullseye was his antagonist. However, I do like how Bullseye, so like you said, like he didn't really affect Daredevil in any significant way. That's because his story was tied to Kingpin, and
Yeah.
and it felt weird that it was like kind of this two different movies melded into one, because Kingpin had his own arc being a bad guy. That's weird, but I do like that Bullseye's actually has actual motivations in this movie, because if you guys remember Ben Affleck's movie, his motivation was he threw something at Daredevil and he missed, so he hated Daredevil because he made him miss. You guys remember that?
Yeah,
It's
that was
the
dumb.
dumbest
No,
super
I
villain.
don't remember.
I feel like that's like my
Yeah.
nephew when he gets mad.
Yeah, no
Right,
shit,
right?
eh?
It's like-
no shit.
It's like some child crap. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you made me miss. My perfect record is no longer perfect. I'm gonna declare a blood feud. It's so weird.
Makes him sound like some sort of petulant child.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. No, for sure. I
mean,
I definitely
It did
agree
seem
with
like he
that.
had like extreme OCD in the movie, which should probably like tell you something. But anyways, you were at the restaurant. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no. You added some great points there. You know, like there's this character deserves a lot of conversation because he is an active part of the story for sure. So when Bullseye and Daredevil kind of first meet for the first time, Bullseye recognizes him as the guy that's being talked about in the newspaper. So he's taking a lot of delight in coming face to face with this guy. He's looking forward to this fight. Apparently, that's kind of the tone that's being set for this confrontation within the treatment. So he's looking at him in amazement, hearing about this masked devil, and he says that he never believed such a man existed, as he's like throwing ninja stars at him, and
Yeah.
Daredevil apparently dodges all of them, and it's like several of them, and cringy line, but as Daredevil is charging him to kind of like attack him, he's like, believe it. And then there's this
Naruto says that.
Naruto. Yeah.
And
yeah, and then there's this call back to kind of what Sabo was talking about, this dark kind of visceral energy, this lethal energy that Daredevil has. Like he just kind of taps into it as he's like fighting Bullseye with this viciousness, a man possessed, someone who exercises his demons through violence and adrenaline. It's basically, it's plain and obvious that there is something darker inside Matt Murdock than just somebody who wants to do the right thing with it, within this encounter. And then during the encounter, Bullseye's cracking all kinds of jokes. Like they kind of made him one of those villains, like the Joker in a way.
Mhm.
He's like,
Of
what
course
he
they
said?
did. I hate
Yeah.
that in superhero movies. They always
Yeah.
default to that when they can't write a fucking villain. I hate it. Anyways.
It could be cheesy. And he says something along the lines of like, who designed that getup? He asks. It's so cool. You think I could get one like that? But I want an original, I don't want to buy it off the rack. Again, not the greatest.
It's very
dialogue
90s.
ever.
I feel like it's 90s. Also, it's the treatment. I don't know. I would see that.
Yeah.
I could see that in one of like the Batman movies.
I mean, I could see it if Daredevil was like super serious and like and Bullseye's trying to break him and trying to kind of like make a mockery of him. That'd be
Mhm.
kind of cool. But if it's just like they don't know how to write a villain, therefore write Joker, I fucking hate that in movies.
Yeah.
So this fight
Yeah.
took place on like this crane or this wire or some shit, something that kind of shows off their athleticism and their balance and all. That's kind of what they do with Daredevil and Bullseye in the comic books. So the fight ends when they tumble from this precarious height above the river, and Daredevil saves himself with his billy club. This is the first time you get to see him use his billy club, and Bullseye's hanging on to him, and they're just kind of dangling over the water like this. And Daredevil says to him again, confess your sins.
Oh, I hate
And
that
this
moment.
thing,
Bullseye
man.
and Bullseye goes, "You're kidding, right? Confess your sins." Okay, says Bullseye. I had lustful thoughts about Kathleen Lee Gifford. When I was little, I flushed turtles down the toilet and I enjoyed it.
Ew,
And
what?
Yeah, this is his lines. And I
Yeah.
prefer classic Star Trek to the new stuff. Bullseye laughs, and no one gets a bigger kick out of himself than he does. So,
Okay.
yeah.
He just won me over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
mind that part.
This-
And I don't mind Bullseye being in this either. Like I feel like it's smaller fights that are gonna like lead up to bigger things. So and I think it makes sense
Yeah.
that the bad guys have henchmen. So
Yeah, and you know, it intersects with Kingpin's story because he sent Bullseye out to kill these guys, right? Like he's sending Bullseye around to take out all of his competition or anybody who's resisting what his larger plan is, which we'll get to, I think, within like the next couple of minutes. Bullseye loses his grip on Daredevil, falls into the water, and he does a very Joker thing. He howls delightedly as he falls.
That's
And
so
he gets
interesting
arrested.
to me.
Yeah, very Joker, right? Like very
Yeah.
Jack
Yeah.
Nicholson,
Inspired,
very very Joker. He emerges from the river. The police are waiting there. He gets arrested, and that's basically it. And then we meet Kingpin for the first time. He's in his home, which is on top of this gigantic hotel in New York. He's hanging out with the mayor, and then we get to meet Nikos Nachios, Kingpin's best friend, a former crime boss himself, now basically a legit businessman, and he's there to talk to Kingpin about this event gala that's coming up for his wife's charity. And apparently Kingpin's got this like shrine built to his wife in like
Yeah.
a separate room with like paintings and photos and all kinds of shit. And Nikos tries to like say to him, you know, like, why are you still in this life? Like, why don't you give it up for her, right? Like, why do you want to continue to do this? And he basically just says that, you know, he wants to be challenged. And this is this is a challenge for him. And this is where he kind of sees the best opportunity to apply his skill set. That's kind of what kind of comes across. Like he wants to be a part of this life. He's not going to give it up for anybody. So, you know, he's I guess he's conflicted, but he doesn't sound that conflicted. But he has a very cool line that calls back to The Godfather, which I like. He's like, I'm not ready to sit back like Don Corleone and tend my garden.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, man.
That's
like
true.
that. So then Fisk meets up with his lieutenant, this like corporate looking dude, and they're talking about Bullseye and how Bullseye basically screwed up this hit on the Italian guys. Like he made it too much of a spectacle. It was supposed to be discreet. It was supposed to be under the radar. Nobody was supposed to know about this. And Bullseye made like a complete dramatic spectacle of it, like a performance out of it. So they're pretty pissed off. And Kingpin says as he's walking away, don't worry, I'll take care of it. He's like, so obviously.
There's also one other thing. So this guy, I think, is showing him like weapons and stuff or things.
Oh,
to,
no,
like,
not
use.
this guy. That's Baron Strucker.
Oh, Baron Strucker. Yeah, that's later. Okay. Well, guys,
Yeah,
wait
yeah,
for
yeah.
that part.
Yeah. We'll definitely get to that part. So this is the coolest part of the film thus far for me, because it's where Daredevil meets Elektra, and this is fucking crazy. So he's on patrol. He's swinging around the city, and then he sees a woman standing on the North Tower. Okay, this is nuts. The North Tower of the World Trade Center. There's a woman standing on the North Tower, the top of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Do you know how tall the North Tower of the World Trade Center is?
Mhm.
was.
I'm sorry, but like, one, how does Elektra get up there? Two, how does
She's
Daredevil
rich.
even get up there?
He's
Those are
crazy.
all
I
good
kind of don't
questions.
understand what the point of this is. I don't know why she's doing this.
Yeah.
It looks
But, like-
cool. It looks cool to be up on a tower.
Totally does.
Is she like that
but-
bored that she's gonna go like swinging off towers? I don't know.
Well, apparently in that scene with Nikos, he explains to Kingpin that she's off doing her own thing, that she couldn't come for the visit. So this is what she wants to do.
Yeah,
And
he
she wants
said
to
he
go-
said that she went to bed, that she was tired.
Yeah,
from the
she went to
fight.
bed. Yeah, she went to bed. So, okay,
It's-
I don't get this, because in almost every comic book, we find superheroes who have the ability to kind of climb to, very tall heights, to get up very tall buildings, don't have any buildings bigger than them close to the building that they're trying to get to. So how the fuck do they get on that building?
Okay, so
Like,
she
if
took the
Spider-Man-
elevator. She took the elevator up.
Okay. So you think she broke into the World Trade Center and then took the elevator up?
I mean, how else is she gonna
she's
get
rich.
there?
She probably just walked in and went, "I'm Electra Nachos. I own like part of the city. You're gonna
Okay,
let me
she
up
could
there."
probably do that. Okay,
Their
she could
security
probably do that.
manager once
Or
wrote an
land-
article about how bad the security was in the building.
Oh,
Oh yeah. Okay.
She
Well,
probably
okay.
landed there on a helicopter, just like, "Yep, this is my bedtime routine."
Okay. Well, that doesn't explain how Daredevil gets up there, though.
Mm,
Right?
Yeah.
Like, he has a billy club with a cable in it. Like,
yeah.
how the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know, man. They
That's
just get
crazy.
there.
This whole scene is very troubling because she's just like walking on a tightrope apparently, and it's just like in the movie like spends a lot of time.
No, dude. She actually takes her own rope, throws it across to the other tower,
Yeah.
and then walks across it like
walks
a
across
fucking
it. Yeah.
trapeze artist. Or not
See-
trapeze, high wire artist or whatever.
Yeah, this is weird to me because the movie spends a lot of time justifying Daredevil's like ascent into superhero, like into the tights, right? Like they justify it in a very human way as much as they can. And then you get introduced to Elektra, and there's no justification for her doing, like, I'm not saying there isn't one. There is one, obviously, because she's a hero in her own right. But at this point in the movie, there is no justification for her doing any of this.
Not
and
yet,
You just see
yeah.
her.
Except
You just
for that
see
it
her
looks
doing this
cool.
crazy shit, and it's just like it's this weird departure from what they were going with from the beginning of the movie till now, which is like justify the shit out of Daredevil being like Daredevil, because like they're bridging the gap between reality and the superhero comic book stance. And then you see Daredevil. You see Elektra just like doing some crazy shit. The scene that she gets introduced, it was like this weird, like jarring thing for me.
Yeah,
But
but
anyways.
in 1997, you couldn't really put like a good backstory in for like a secondary character, right? Like that would be very, very tough to do.
Like the thing is, like, they need to have a backstory if they're gonna do a scene of her running across two, like, however tall buildings. They didn't have to give her a backstory if they didn't make her do some crazy shit the moment we meet her.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
That's true.
You understand?
She could have
That's
been
true.
like
Yeah, you make
training
a
or
point.
something. Like if he saw her in a different thing, if she was like training.
Yeah,
or
if she was
whatever
sparring
else.
or like she's beating up some muggers or something.
As long as
Yeah.
it's not a playground. As long as it's not a playground. Right? Exactly.
That's what I
Yeah.
mean. It's like the meeting in the playground. I have to compare
Yeah.
it to this meeting, and I just don't
Yeah.
know what's
But
worse.
let me tell you, whatever she did, it worked because he was mesmerized.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's why I compared it to like, a sailor meeting like a mermaid in
Yeah,
like the
that's-
1600s.
yeah,
right?
yeah. That's actually
You know?
really apt. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, we
it's-
should all
it's-
try that. We should try slacklining across two tall buildings.
Yeah,
Try to
none of us
Just
yeah, none of
to
us
get
would
the
die.
attention of a man for no other reason.
Wow. Oh, so you didn't like the
Christina,
subtext
do-
of that,
do the-
did you,
do the
Christina?
play-
I don't like.
Christina,
yeah, I don't
do the
like
playground
that.
first, and then work your way up to work your way up to high-rise buildings. Okay, please.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah, I
didn't like
feel
it that she went. Well, one, she didn't go to those lengths to attract a guy.
Yeah, she
No,
was
I
just
know.
being
It just
weirdo.
She
feels
was
that
fucking
way.
around.
It
Yeah,
just
she was
feels that
fucking
way, the way
around.
it's written. But do we like if that was her character, then fine. But they never established that that's something her character would just do randomly. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess like so as this acts go on, or like as we get to know her character more, we do see like a little bit like obviously the development happens after. So we like see her and she's like, okay, this girl is like doing these ridiculous things. And I even think their next meeting to me is also somewhat surreal in a way, and we can get into that when we get to farther into Act 2. But I do find their interactions really interesting, and I find them to be her and him to be very interesting characters together because they're both very, I don't want to say self-obsessed, but like they both have like a trauma of sorts that they're like that is like their main focus, and that's like
Yeah.
kind of like
Right.
what is in their brain all
Yeah.
the time.
They're survivors.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
They-
definitely survivors.
I think it
So
definitely
as-
makes sense to bond over trauma too. That's a thing.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think bonding
Yeah.
over trauma makes a lot of sense for, for character development for sure. Or even just in real life. Like, like when you find somebody who's kind of shared in your experience, it definitely strengthens that bond or that relationship for sure. So I can see why Yeah. So as she's pirouetting and hopping on this fucking rope, Daredevil jumps out onto the rope himself and right in front of her, and she interprets this as an attack. She defends herself, and they're basically in hand-to-hand combat on this fucking rope. This I want to see, dude.
Me too.
And then they battle briefly, and then he tries to convince her that he's not going to hurt her. He just wants to talk. She smiles at him, leaps over his head, races to the South Tower, cuts the rope with a sigh, sending Daredevil falling. She watches as he falls. She's smiling about it, apparently. She's clearly intrigued. There's a bracket thing that says she's clearly intrigued by this man. And then Daredevil's billy club whips out, hooks the ledge, and Daredevil saves himself. Then she's gone. And then he follows her. He sees her at the top of the New York building where Kingpin lives. And then he sees her jump on the elevator and goes down to Wilson Fisk's living quarters. Yeah. So
yeah,
crazy.
That's funny. It's funny that she legit was like she didn't know if he could save himself or not.
Yeah.
Exactly. She wanted to murder him, dude. She wanted to murder him. But then again, it kind of calls back to that line that she drops on Matt at this thing at the banquet, which we'll definitely talk about because that's a really awesome line. In the midst of this, Wilson Fisk or the Kingpin. He's working to try and secure some pretty heavy duty weaponry from the guys at Hydra, Baron Strucker, and he wants to get all kinds of laser guns and sonic guns and rail guns and all kinds of crazy shit because he's trying to consolidate power within New York City. He wants to own the criminal underworld. He doesn't want anybody else to have it. And if they are going to be a part of it, they're going to answer to him. That's basically what he's trying to set up. Now, Strucker basically wants to strike a deal to give these weapons to the Kingpin. He wants the life of Nikos Nachios. He wants Kingpin to kill Nikos Nachios to get these weapons. It basically calls it a blood agreement.
Yeah,
or blood
that's
deal or whatever.
because Hydra could get anyone they wanted to kill someone. The fact that they ask him to do it when they know that's his best friend is just super shady. I mean, it's not expected, but still.
Yeah, no, Sab, I think you're right. I think it undermines the value of Hydra as an opponent, with them having to trade weapons to kill somebody. They could kill anybody they wanted. So it doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't really pull for me. But
unless they're trying to
Chris, you were gonna say
prove something? Yeah.
No, yeah, I find it odd as well. I guess we can't really hope for two nuanced bad guys. One nuanced bad guy is already rare enough. Obviously, there's gonna be a character that's evil for the sake of being evil. It is just weird.
Yeah. Also, one other thing about Hydra, the one weapon they show him, which is the crab-like vehicle, so described. They show him this thing. It's called the crab-like vehicle. It says, think of a state-of-the-art tank with claws instead of wheels, capable of moving across any terrain, scaling mountains, and climbing walls. I'm just damn, what does that look like? I'm picturing a scorpion kind of thing. I don't know.
I think it looks like the thing that we saw in Justice League that Batman had. That's what I think. But the crawler, or whatever the hell it was called, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Am I the only one that's seen the Justice League movie? What the fuck?
No,
it wasn't coming to mind.
Crawler?
Oh, the crawler.
Oh yeah.
So DA Tower keeps bugging Matt to come over to the DA's office and help her get the Kingpin. But he knows in the back of his mind, the only way he's ever going to get him is as Daredevil, not as Matt Murdock. He understands that Kingpin is beyond the reach of the legal system. The only way you're going to get him is with a fist. That's it. So he continues on with being Daredevil. So after this courtroom drama scene, this kind of slice of Matt's legal life we get to see, where DA Tower is still trying to intellectually bully him into becoming, working for the DA office. This is after Matt has basically took down a couple slumlords in a local courtroom in Hell's Kitchen. The scene switches over to Bullseye and the Kingpin in the Kingpin's living room, and they're talking and they're smoking cigars and they're having brandy and whatever. And the Kingpin's basically telling him the way that you killed DeChico or whatever his name was, because Dematteis used a bunch of arbitrary names of comic book writers for the names of characters. So all the guys that die are actually people he worked on comic books with, which is kind of
That's funny. I did not know
Yeah.
that. That's
yeah,
great.
apparently that's how he named all his characters. So they're talking about what happened, and he's like, that was way too much of a spectacle. Like, it was supposed to be kind of under the radar. Nobody's supposed to know that. One, I'm trying to consolidate power. Two, we don't want the police involved. Blah 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 blah. And Bullseye like explains to him like, when you hired me for this job, you knew exactly who I was. Like, you can't expect me to be anything different than I am, which kind of insinuates some sort of intimate understanding between the two of them too. It's not just like he hired Bullseye because he's a good killer. It's almost like he hired Bullseye because he has a personal sense of trust in him. That's kind of what I got from that. I don't know about you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Or Bullseye thinks he's so famous
Yeah.
that people just know about him.
Yeah, that's also
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also possible. But it does sound like they have some sort of personal relationship for sure.
Yeah.
So
Repeat customer.
yeah, so Fisk basically says to him, "Listen, I'm willing to forgive and forget." And then Bullseye says, "Brighton Beach?" ? And the Russians ? And he's grinning and he's all happy about this shit. And he's like, "If my idea for this criminal council is to work, Mr. Smerdyakov being difficult does not work for me." So he basically says to him, "You got the green light. Go and kill these Russians. Go and take care of these guys in Brighton Beach for me." So from that scene with Bullseye, after Fisk forgives him, we cut to the top of New York, where Wilson Fisk lives, the Kingpin lives. He's holding a charity ball for the Vanessa Fisk Foundation, his wife, and all of New York's elite is there. The Nachioses are there. All the bigwigs, the mayor, everybody's there. And, off in the corner, Karen Page and Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson are kind of having their own little conversation. And they're kind of speculating as to why they've been invited to this particular party because they don't understand why they're there. And then somebody significant taps them on the shoulder, and that's where we stop.
Someone significant, but who could it be?
Who could it be? Who could it be, folks? Who's tapping Matt Murdock on the shoulder at an elegant party? Is it Elektra? Is it Wilson Fisk? Is it Bullseye? Who is
Is it Captain America?
Is it Spiderman?
Iron Man.
There's
Sorry,
really
guys.
the list is endless.
Sorry, guys. Listen, we weren't trying to purposely fuck with you. This episode's running a little bit long. And we want to be able to cover everything else as in depth as we covered the rest of it or the previous stuff. So, bear with us. We'll come back. We'll finish this one off. This treatment is fantastic. There's still so much more to come. The ending is extremely satisfying, and we get to see more action from Daredevil and Bullseye and definitely Elektra. And wait till you see the relationship dynamic between Elektra and Kingpin. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. This is stuff that they write now that was written in 1997. Like, this is the kind of story that you get now. True. And this was written in 1997 by Jean-Marc Dematteis. Amazing. Mm-hmm. So we're going to sign off here, guys. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Meanwhile Back on the podcast. We really appreciate all the support, all the love. We get your Instagram messages, we get your emails, we get your reviews, and we can't say thank you enough. But we would ask you, if you haven't had a chance to review the show, please head over to Stitcher, Podchaser, or Apple Podcasts and drop us a review. Let us know how you feel about the show. Be as honest as you can, because all the feedback helps us as we try and improve the show as we move forward. And if you know somebody who likes this kind of stuff, that, digs comic books and sci-fi and fantasy and anime and all these great things, all this fantastic made up shit, tell them to check out our show. Send them a link to our show. Let them check it out for themselves. Don't tell them to check out our show. Let them check it out for themselves. We would really, really, really appreciate it. So, signing off, your co-hosts have been Frank McGuire,
Christina Dudumas,
Sabamir,
and Chris Sabana.
And our producer was Beatrice Ledesma. Thank you, Beatrice. Peace.
Have a good night.
Bye.